And with that, I'll give another welcome to everybody who joined. I did pull some of the names of people who registered, and I see that some others have joined today. So thanks for coming in. These are just a few of the people who we have invited, definitely a lot of people on our invitation list. And our goal was to get a diversity of experts and individuals who are committed to hummingbird conservation and who can contribute to the conservation plan. So we have researchers and land managers, nonprofit organizations. We have representatives from Canada, the United States, and Mexico. And we feel that for this to be a truly successful conservation plan, we do need representation from the three nations that support the health and well-being of our shared migratory hummingbirds. And our agenda for today is, again, we'll be speaking with Greg Butcher. We'll start the presentation. After that, he'll turn it over to Sarai, and then Sarai will turn it over to Christine. We're going to share a little bit about the Western Hummingbird Partnership, the committee, some of the resources and work that we've done, and then, of course, the bigger point of why should we have a hummingbird conservation plan. At that point, at the end, we'll open it up for questions and answers and invite you to discuss the plan and the goals with us. And then at the end, also, we'll share the dates for a 3-day, 4 hours per day workshop where we will accomplish the plan. And that's the part we really want you involved with. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, Greg, to you.
Thanks, Sue. Sue's been our coordinator. I didn't count the years, but she's kept us moving over the years. We really appreciate her leadership. And we appreciate your joining us. So one of the main reasons we want to do this plan is to broaden our membership and outreach and get more people working together for hummingbird conservation in these 3 countries. So we really appreciate your being here with us today. Next. So we've been going on. Sarah E. is actually our historian. She'll tell you a little bit about how we got started, but it was about 12 years ago. This is the current crew right now on the advisory committee. Deanna Williams and Jamie Ratliff are both Forest Service wildlife biologists in the Northwest. John Alexander is with Klamath Bird Observatory. Sarah E. Contreras is with the University of Guadalajara, Caxur. Christine Bishop is with Environment and Climate Change Canada. Jeff Geipel with Point Blue Conservation Science, and Susan Bonfield with Environment for the Americas. Next. We have a draft vision. We'll let everybody weigh in on this. So we'll send this out to everybody in an email and ask you to give us some suggestions on how you might want to change this. But our thought is we're looking for a future with thriving populations of Western hummingbirds shared by 3 nations. And you'll see we're really emphasizing in the planning the migratory species, but our hope always is when we work on migratory species that we can help resident species in Mexico that share the habitats with the migratory species. So we have expertise trinationally, and which is really going to help all our hummingbirds and many other species in addition, including pollinators and other bird species. Next. We have a Western Hummingbird Partnership website. So if you Google Western Hummingbird Partnership, you'll come to a lot of assets that we have on the website. One is a Hummer guide to all of these migratory species, and we do have it in Spanish and in English. Next. One of my favorite things that we've accomplished so far is that we have land managers' guides to different regions in the Western United States. And so it takes a little bit of finagling to find these on our website, but we have some really good recommendations of plants used by hummingbirds in these specific regions of the Western United States. So these are cover just a few states at a time, which means that the plant recommendations can be fairly specific. Next. So these are things that we want to take on after the conservation plan completion. So we want to expand and diversify our steering committee. We especially are looking for more representation from Canada, from Mexico, and from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. So we want to broaden our committee so that we can be much more effective in making conservation happen after this conservation plan is made. So really an action plan is kind of an after action thing. We want to focus on making sure that habitat is improved for hummingbirds. There's a lot of opportunity for that, especially after disturbance. So after fire or after logging or after other activities that open up habitat, we want to make strong recommendations for what we can do to improve hummingbird habitat. And we know that there's a lot of funding for this now. And so we plan as a committee to really focus on funding opportunities so that habitat becomes better for hummingbirds in the future, and for other pollinators and for other species that share habitat with hummingbirds. We expect to have some specific working groups will come out as a recommendation from this plan. So we want to facilitate those. We want to update the plan regularly. So there's been a lot of conservation planning where the conservation plan kind of gets lost after it's done. So we think the benefit of this process is if we keep an active Western Hummingbird partnership, we can adopt the plan, make sure it stays up to date and is focused on the most effective actions we can do. So we plan regular reports to all of you, whether you're part of our steering committee or not. We want to keep you up to date on what we're doing, and we want you to keep us up to date on what you're doing to make the world a better place for hummingbirds. And again, we've got the website. Sue has active Facebook posts. We can do Twitter, so we can facilitate communication. So please let us know what your favorite communication venue is so we can stay active in that arena, and hopefully you'll help us keep the word alive for hummingbird and pollinator conservation. Where funding permits, we're still on that slide, thank you. Where funding permits, will initiate collaborative conservation projects consistent with the recommendations from the plan. And by having the plan, it makes hummingbird projects more competitive for the Neotropical Migratory Bird Conservation Fund run by Fish and Wildlife Service. They give priority to proposals that are backed by a conservation plan. So hopefully before the end of this year, we will enable you for your November project proposal be more competitive. Next. So in the United States, a huge thing happened in 2019. Science magazine published a publication that highlighted the fact that we've lost almost 3 billion birds since 1970. What this means is that birds that used to be common are now rare. Birds that are now rare are now threatened or in danger of extinction. And so it really has been a call to action for many of us. And we want to have you participate in this plan so that we can be more focused in our conservation activities. Next. And so what we've done since the 3 billion birds publication is we've designed a road to recovery. So I think if you Google road to recovery, it will get you to a site where there's 5 actions that are promoted in the road to recovery. And one of the things we want to do is move hummingbirds from kind of an early thinking process of what can be done to help hummingbirds to recovery in progress. And what I meant to say earlier is that Sue has put together already a workshop on post-disturbance actions that we can take to promote hummingbird conservation and other pollinator conservation that we did for California. We plan to do this same workshop in the Pacific Northwest, and we can do it in other regions covered by this plan as well. So a workshop that really focuses on habitat improvement for hummingbirds, which will get recovery in progress for these species. Next. In the first few years of the Western Hummingbird Partnership, we really focused on Rufus Hummingbird because it's been well known that they've declined at greater than 1% per year since 1970. But all of a sudden we took a look, and almost all the migratory hummingbirds that we share among these 3 countries are birds of conservation concern, according to the US Fish and Wildlife Service. And so that's why we want to broaden this plan and cover multiple species of hummingbirds and not just the Rufus Hummingbird. And then I'll pass this over to Christine Bishop from Environment Climate Change Canada. Tell us a little about the status of these hummingbirds in Canada.
Thanks, Greg. So as listed here, right now the Rufus Hummingbird isn't listed, but it's high on the priority list for consideration for being listed, and will probably be evaluated sometime in the next, probably 2023, maybe 2022. And there's a number of other species, which I'll mention in a few minutes, that aren't listed, aren't being considered for listed, but maybe we should start thinking about their conservation. Pass it over to Sarah E. She'll tell us about Mexico.
Yeah, and in Saraí will be speaking in Spanish and taking the next session. So for everyone who's an English speaker, if you can go to translation, and those of you who are currently in the Spanish to English to Spanish translation can come back to Saraí.
Hola, ¿me escuchan? Bueno, antes que nada les agradezco inmensamente a todos y a todas por estar aquí, de verdad que es un gran gusto. Y bueno, una de las cosas que nosotros estamos viendo también aquí en México es, por ejemplo, en los listados que tenemos por Berlanga et al. 2018, donde tenemos el grado de vulnerabilidad de 4 a 20. Este grado de vulnerabilidad, claro, es 4 cuando es una menor vulnerabilidad y 20 es lo máximo. Y si ustedes ven el listado aquí, en algunas de nuestras especies que tienen más de 12, 13, entonces muchos se acercan al 20, como el caso de Celasphorus rufus, Celasphorus asin y Celasphorus calliope. Entonces, hay que tomar en cuenta que muchas de estas especies que compartimos tienen que recorrer grandes distancias, y estas distancias hacen que atraviesen por diferentes ecosistemas, como es el caso de Celasphorus rufus y también Celasphorus asin. Celasphorus asin también, bueno, tiene un número elevado de vulnerabilidad que debemos de poner atención, porque pues el rango de distribución, por ejemplo, en Estados Unidos es muy pequeño, pero cuando viene a México, bueno, se amplía un poco más, y sin embargo, donde se establece, que es generalmente como en el eje neovolcánico, pues estamos perdiendo hábitat, y creo que son de las cosas que nosotros debemos de tomar en cuenta. Muchas gracias. Bueno, esta diapositiva, gracias Susan por colocarla. Ya saben que me especializo en el fuego y ver cuál es la respuesta de áreas que han sido incendiadas y cómo las poblaciones de colibrí responden en el oeste de México. Y bueno, aquí tenemos también al director de la Reserva, Fernando, donde nosotros hemos estado aplicando ya ese conocimiento generado por casi 30 años, lo generamos y lo estamos aplicando para hacer hábitat, especialmente y poniendo atención a las especies migratorias y por supuesto residentes y endémicas del oeste de México. La siguiente. Una de las cosas que creemos que hay que considerar y que tenemos acervo ya bibliográfico, como esta bella guía de la doctora María del Coro Arismendi y Humberto Berlanga, es donde tenemos sintetizada pues las 57 especies de colibríes que se encuentran, esa información sobre los ciclos de vida, y de las cuales, por ejemplo, 19, pues también las compartimos con Estados Unidos, ¿no? Esto no quiere decir que hagan esas migraciones largas, porque ya sabemos de todas estas 57, pues 8 son las que hacen migraciones de larga distancia, 7 se encuentran en el oeste y 1 en el este. Y de estas, pues hay 5 especies en Canadá. Una de las cosas es que pues nosotros nos vamos a enfocar en aquellas especies que se encuentran en el oeste de América del Norte, que compartimos con los 3 países, y que bueno, estamos muy gustosos de que ustedes puedan participar para que nos apoyemos entre todos con sus expertise, su experiencia en la creación de un plan que tenga éxito, ¿verdad? Para asegurar la protección de las especies migratorias de colibríes, y a la vez asegurar aquellas residentes o endémicas que se encuentran en nuestro país. La siguiente. Bueno, este documento me encanta porque creo que ahí quedó en aquella bella reunión que, bueno, muchos, bueno, de esto fue liderado también por Susan Weffington, que ahora no nos pudo acompañar, y que los diferentes países también colaboraron para entregar un plan o un inicio de plan para asegurar las poblaciones de los colibríes. Y en ello se dibujaron las primeras líneas de cómo los 3 países pudiéramos colaborar para mejorar las poblaciones y conservar las poblaciones de los colibríes. Por ejemplo, la siguiente. En este plan hablamos de las mayores acciones. Entre ellas teníamos el monitoreo. Nos falta coordinar esos esfuerzos de un programa de monitoreo que atraviese los 3 países. También en relación a la investigación tenemos varios huecos y entre esos huecos ya hemos avanzado en algunos, pero en otros todavía nos hace falta cómo conocer el estado de salud o cómo afecta estas enfermedades o a nivel genético, bueno, se conoce poco en relación a nuestros colibríes. También una de las cosas que es sumamente importante es entender que ahora ya no tenemos grandes extensiones de hábitat de un solo ecosistema, sino lo tenemos fragmentado y dentro de esa fragmentación hay diferentes estados serales y los colibríes están respondiendo de manera diferente de las diferentes especies a esto y sobre todo, por ejemplo, cuando estamos hablando de amenazas, pues necesitamos entender muy bien cómo es cómo funciona la comunidad, por ejemplo, todos los colibríes migratorios a lo mejor con las especies residentes cuando están aquí en México y cómo cada uno de ellos se asocia para responder y nosotros poder dar unas mejores acciones de manejo que ahorita pues ya lo estamos haciendo en la Reserva de la Biosfera Sierra de Manantlán. Y el último tema que, bueno, ahora es más sonado es el cambio climático. Sabemos que el cambio climático sí afecta, ¿verdad? Está afectando, no sabemos exactamente de todas las especies de colibríes, pero hay una gran preocupación por los cambios de fenología en las plantas, causadas también por cambios como la lluvia, la humedad, y como esto, pues hay una no sincronización del vuelo. Entonces, del vuelo o de las paradas que va haciendo los colibríes al lugar donde tienen que llegar y cumplan con su ciclo de vida. Perdón. Y bueno, otro de los aspectos interesantes también que hemos ya desarrollado en estos últimos años es conocer cómo es el efecto de los incendios forestales, pero en el oeste de América del Norte, no solamente en México, sino en toda esta línea. Y hemos aprendido mucho, hemos aprendido que hay respuestas diferentes y que si bien el incendio puede ser una amenaza, pues algunos pueden beneficiarse y que las técnicas de manejo pueden ser diferentes dependiendo de la escala a la que estemos trabajando. Entonces aquí tenemos un bello trabajo que John Alexander pues, lideró y que tiene datos muy interesantes. Y bueno, ahorita ya le paso la palabra a mi compañera, la doctora Christine Bishop.
So we're going to switch to English now. So everyone who's in translation from Spanish to English can come out, and those who need translation to Spanish can choose the translation button. Thanks, Christine.
Yeah, hello again. Yeah, I'm a research scientist that works with Environment and Climate Change Canada. And my current hummingbird research is examining pesticides and their effects on hummingbirds. And also a complementary study studying bees at some of our same study sites in the Fraser Valley here in Canada. Some of the effects we're looking at, including energy use and potential impacts on microbiome and the hummingbirds. But what I'd like to talk to you today about is some work that we've also done in terms of looking at like the long-term population trends in hummingbirds in Western North America. If you can go to the next slide. In working in collaboration with the three nations, as Greg mentioned, the Western Hummingbird Partnership published this report last year, and it's available on the WHP website in English, Spanish, and French. And in it, we looked at Rufus hummingbird biology, population trends, and potential threats. Bit of a springboard to help us with this workshop that will be coming up. And in that report, if you go to the next slide, we showed this map and data from the 2016 Partners in Flight report. And as you can see here, and Greg mentioned earlier that there has been this huge decrease in Rufus hummingbirds since 1974. This is utilizing an analysis of the breeding bird survey data. But you can also see that there are some sites that haven't declined as much as others. So it's a complex picture. And this was really useful to us when we went forward and looked at multiple species of hummingbirds in North America to examine a long-term breeding bird survey trends. And if you look at the next slide, this is a paper that was published in 2021. And in this paper, we examined 8 of the 19 species of hummingbirds and their breeding bird survey trends. And the reason that we only examined 8 is that there's only a limited number of species where there's a big enough and robust data set across large areas where we could actually, analyze these long-term trends. And if you look at this, just taking you to the legend here that says period 1970 to 2019, and then below it 2009 to 2019. So there's 2 bars for each species, and the one on the left is sort of the earlier or the longer term one, and the one on the right is the more recent decade. The point here is that what we found, if you look at the left here, is that the Selasphorus species are showing very precipitous decline. Certainly the Rufus and the Allens, stronger decline than the broad-tailed and the Calliope. I guess in the actual detailed analysis, Calliope don't show a significant decline. You can see the amount of variation there, but none of them are showing a very strong increase. And so not only do we have concerns for species that are showing a significant decline like the Rufus and Allens, but others in that genus as well. And then this analysis allowed us to compare that to the Archilochus and the Clip. And you can see that, there's some species that are showing a strong increase, such as the Annas. Some are relatively stable, like the Costus. And even the ruby-throated hummingbird that had showed such a strong increase in the longer term period is actually starting to show a significant decline in the last decade. Granted, it's an eastern species, but it's interesting to see that strong increase and then the decrease. So this is, again, is a paper that we feel that is a call to action in terms of understanding what might be going on with this genus. What are some of the commonalities that might be related to these species with very different life history characteristics, and some of the things that we would delve into in the workshop. Thanks.
Thanks, Christine. And now I'd like to invite the Foundations of Success to join us to describe the process of developing the conservation plan. Jacqueline and Armando, are you there?
Yes, thanks, Susan.
Great. Let me find you and spotlight you.
Just let me know when to. Oh, great. I see.
Okay, there you are.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Lucas, and I'm joined by my colleague Armando, who you'll hear from shortly. We are from a nonprofit called Foundations of Success. I see a few familiar names in the participants list, so it's great to work with some of you again. So we're a mission-driven nonprofit, as I mentioned, and our kind of mission and our goal is to amplify the collective impact of the global conservation community. So we don't necessarily implement our own conservation projects, but we work with organizations, government agencies, businesses all over the world to help make their conservation plans and their structure, their organization for species and ecosystems more robust, bringing in evidence, working on scaling lots of different issues. We are part of a collective, so we have kind of the original start of FOS was in the United States. We have our FOS US team, and then Armando is joining us from our FOS LAC team, Latin America and the Caribbean. And then we also have a team based in Europe. So it's a great way for us to share resources with one another and focus on different geographies in the world. As it mentions in our work, we do a mix of things. We don't only act as consultants, but we also provide training and coaching. We work with other communities of practice to develop frameworks and tools for better conservation planning, facilitate collaborative learning, and ultimately our goal is to build capacity for the future focused on conservation work. So if you want to jump to the next slide. This just kind of breaks down maybe some familiar terms and some different kind of groups for that we work with the Foundations of Success. So we use a planning framework for conservation work called the Conservation Standards. If you've used this process in the past, you may have heard it referred to as the Open Standards, with the full name, the Open Standards for the Practice of Conservation. So this is just nothing crazy or new, just a way for us to walk through different steps of assessing a different conservation scenario and working through a process. Armando will talk a little bit more about the conservation standards shortly. We are part of a larger kind of working group and consortium called the Conservation Measures Practice, or CMP. And again, this is joined by government agencies, small nonprofits, huge kind of bingos, and businesses. And we all work together again to create that guidance. And this was kind of where the conservation standards came from. In that there's different practitioners and again, sharing knowledge in conservation. They form the Conservation Coaches Network. You might also hear that referred to as CCNet, all again to support the conservation standards and developing conservation planning work. We will likely use a software called Marathi throughout this process, but it is also another conservation software that helps to support the conservation standards, look at threat assessments. You can see that some of that has already been mentioned earlier, as well as helping to develop out, the vision and diagramming work to see those relationships throughout the planning process. So I know that's a lot in a hurry, but just to give you a very brief overview of who we are and the different partnerships and organizations we work with. We're excited to be helping to facilitate this planning process, and I will pass it over to Armando to talk a little bit more about the process.
Thank you, Jacqueline. If we can go to the next one, and I would very much like to switch to Spanish, if that's possible.
Yeah, that's great. Let's just give everybody a second to get out of the translation
Sure.
if they're a Spanish speaker, and the English speakers can go to translation. I'll also turn off the live translation because when it tries to translate in print from Spanish, it doesn't work so well. So for
It
the
doesn't
moment,
understand Spanish.
it doesn't understand
okay.
what's going on, right? So I'll turn
Okay.
that off and then, all right. I think that should
Okay.
be enough time. Thank you.
Ok, gracias, Susan. Bueno, estos son los estándares para la conservación, conocidos como CS o Conservation Standards. Han sido desarrollados por muchas organizaciones que tienen la preocupación y el enfoque de trabajar promoviendo el manejo adaptativo en conservación en las organizaciones, los programas y los proyectos. Es un conjunto de herramientas, ahora les voy a mostrar, de buenas prácticas en la gestión adaptativa o el manejo adaptativo de proyectos. Es abierto, entonces es posible utilizarlo, modificarlo, ajustarlo a cada uno de los contextos en los que trabajamos y genera un lenguaje común para todas las organizaciones. Existe incluso una tabla que contiene cómo se llaman ciertos conceptos por cada una de las organizaciones mayores en conservación y cuál es su traducción a este lenguaje común. Entonces sirve como una piedra de Rosetta que nos ayuda a traducir y a trasladar conceptos de una organización o un contexto a otro. Lo que llamemos meta, lo que llamemos objetivo o objectives y goals en inglés, no importa cómo los utilicemos, la definición del concepto la podemos utilizar a través de todas estas realidades. Está siendo utilizado realmente en forma global por grupos de comunidades, por ONGs de conservación y de desarrollo, también por agencias de gobierno que tienen que ver con vida silvestre, con naturaleza, biodiversidad, manejo de recursos. También utilizado por programas de financiamiento, grandes donantes están utilizándolo, y también se utiliza bastante en entrenamientos o en capacitación y programas académicos. Lo que ven ustedes ahí es la versión 4.0 en inglés, ha sido traducido ya a francés, portugués, estamos acabando la versión en castellano o en español, que esperamos esté saliendo ahora en febrero. Es un poco complicado con español porque desde México hasta la punta de Argentina y Chile hay diferentes españoles, entonces tenemos que ver cómo logramos un español más o menos general en esa versión. Entonces espero que esto pueda ayudarles también a entender cómo son los estándares. Salto entonces a la siguiente, the next slide please. Y estos son los estándares. Como dije, es un grupo de herramientas que nos ayuda a entender, planificar, implementar, adaptar y compartir las lecciones y las mejores prácticas que estamos haciendo en nuestras organizaciones, nuestros programas y nuestros proyectos. Empezamos por entender el contexto o conceptualizarlo, entendiendo el propósito del proyecto, cuál es el alcance, la visión, dónde nos vamos a enfocar, en qué objetos de biodiversidad, cuáles son las amenazas y qué tan importantes son para el sistema en el que trabajamos, cuál es en general la situación en la que estamos, el contexto en el que nos encontramos. Luego pasamos a planificar qué queremos lograr, qué metas, qué objetivos, qué estrategias vamos a utilizar para lograr esas metas y objetivos y qué supuestos estamos considerando en esta planificación. Pueden ver ustedes que también incluimos el plan de monitoreo y el plan operacional como parte de su conjunta de la planificación estratégica. El monitoreo es uno de los pilares fuertes del manejo adaptativo y nos permite generar la información para una correcta toma de decisiones. Luego pasamos a implementarlo. Nos concentramos en temas de presupuesto, de planes de trabajo, de planes operativos anuales, etcétera. Y pasamos durante la implementación en varios ciclos iterativos a analizar la información que vamos colectando, a prepararla, analizarla y en base a esa información tomar decisiones de qué es lo que necesitamos ajustar, qué es lo que podemos replicar qué es lo que tenemos que modificar o qué es lo que tenemos que dejar de lado porque no va a funcionar. Y la última parte, el último paso, para mí uno de los más importantes, justamente nuestra filosofía dentro de Foundations of Success, es la de compartir, ¿no? La de aprender y compartir los aprendizajes que estamos haciendo. Y esa es básicamente la caja de herramientas que llamamos estándares para la conservación y que vamos a estar utilizando en la planificación estratégica que, como dijo Jacqueline, vamos a estar apoyándolos a ustedes y que es un honor apoyarlos. Y if we can go to the next one. Ya como último, estas son las fechas y horas del taller. La propuesta que tenemos es hacer 3 sesiones. La primera sesión sería en marzo 30, que es un miércoles, para completar el análisis situacional y la identificación de estrategias. Algunas de las estrategias ya las presentó Saraí y sería tomar esas y pensar en otras para poder identificar todas las estrategias que necesitemos. De acuerdo a la visión y a los objetivos que hemos ido trabajando con ustedes en las tareas. La segunda sesión, al siguiente día, el jueves 31 de marzo, seleccionaríamos las estrategias a partir de esa identificación, priorizamos, clasificamos y vemos cuáles son las que queremos utilizar y comenzamos a desarrollar las teorías de cambio. Es una herramienta usando cadenas de resultados, no voy a profundizar en eso ahora, pero básicamente es cómo pensamos que esa estrategia va a llevarnos hasta los objetivos y las metas que queremos lograr. Y por último, el viernes 1 de abril, terminaríamos de desarrollar esas teorías de cambio y conversaríamos, discutiríamos sobre cuáles son los siguientes pasos. Algo importante, ahí tienen las horas arriba, debajo de fechas y horas del taller. La idea sería hacerlo desde dependiendo de dónde se encuentren, ¿no? Tiempo pacífico, desde las 9 de la mañana, tiempo de las montañas y central desde las 10 y 11, y el tiempo en el este es desde las 12 del día. Si no me equivoco, México o gran parte de México se encuentra entre las montañas y central, y ahí habría que ver si esos horarios son los que nos convienen. Y con esto les agradezco nuevamente, igual que lo que dijo Jacqueline, un honor estar acá y poder ayudarlos y acompañarlos en esta alianza tan grande y planificar estratégicamente lo que van a hacer en los siguientes años. Muchas gracias. Thank you, Susan. That would be all on my part.
Yeah, thank you, Armando and Jacqueline. And that concludes our formal presentation. So I'm going to give Claudia, our translator, a moment to catch up. If you have any questions, this is open question time. I'll pull down the slides, but in the meantime, if you have anything you want to write about later, my email address is here. We also have a Facebook page and a web page if you want to keep up. But right now, I think we'll just open it up to questions. And again, you can go live or you can put it in the chat. And Claudia, you can let us know how you're doing, depending on what language the question comes in. So any questions? Or would any of you like to introduce yourselves? I see a hand from Coro. Coro, si tú quieres preguntar o introducirte.
Yes. Hello, I am Coro Arismendi. I work for the National University of Mexico, and I am very glad to be here with you. And I want to congratulate you about the work you are doing. And of course, I want to participate in the workshop. Thank you.
Thank you, Coro. And we know that you will be a very important participant. So we really appreciate your joining us today and in the future.
Thank you.
Any questions about the process or what we would accomplish during this conservation planning sessions in March. You must have done a really good job explaining everything, all of you presenters. And feel free to speak up in English or Spanish. We have a translator plus lots of Spanish speakers.
I have a question or comment that's occurred to me. I'm David Inoue. I work with hummingbirds at the Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratory in the mountains in Colorado, where we have a resident breeding population of broadtails and post-breeding migrant Rufus and Calliope. And from the banding work that we've been doing there for close to 50 years, I know that there's very strong philopatry, that the birds that are born there tend to come back there. We recapture them year after year. And they also don't move much from even from one valley to the adjacent one. We pretty rarely catch birds that we've banded in one valley and the next valley over. And I wonder whether anybody's thought about how that very strong philopatry affects the possibility of trying to expand populations, whether, for instance, whether transplants of nestlings would be necessary in order to establish a breeding population in a new area.
Anybody want to take that one on?
Yeah, that's why we're glad David is part of our group.
Right.
Because you have that research knowledge, it's going to be very helpful to us, and hopefully can help us think through. I mean, a hummingbird is such a delicate creature. I shudder at being responsible for trying to transplant it to a new habitat, but I'm happy to entertain the notion if that's what it's going to take to improve the populations. And that's one of the strategies that we can address during the 3 days of going through the process. So I hope you'll be with us on the day where we think about how do you get these things into empty niches? If there are some empty niches out there, how do we get some of these birds out into them? So I appreciate you bringing up the thought.
People who work with bees have discovered that if you build the habitat, the bees will come. I guess they're mobile enough that they pretty readily discover new floral resources in places where they weren't available before. But I don't know to what degree that's true of hummingbirds.
Hi, it's Christine. I just want to make a comment on that. I agree with Greg that creative ideas like that one are going to be a great part of the workshop. So I'm really glad that you're thinking about attending, and it'd be put in the context of a lot of priority, what can we do? But also, I think from a science point of view, it'd be good to step back and just say, well, if the breeding bird survey data is indicating that populations are declining in a bigger picture, how are we, what are the commonalities that might be happening in different regions? This might be big picture things like climate change, but we need to understand that. In a question of, moving from one valley to the next, is it going to solve the issue, or is it a bigger, broader geographic range issue? So those are great conversations, and I believe that there will be breakout groups for those kinds of conversations about what can you do when you do have, a really threatened species that's showing very precipitous declines.
Thanks, Dave, and thanks, Christine and Greg. Saraí, did you want to add anything?
Sí, voy a hablar en español.
Está
Muchas
bien.
gracias. Una de las cosas que me llama mucho la atención y que hemos aprendido aquí en esta región, pensando sobre todo en Celasphorus platycercus, es que por ejemplo, la humedad va a tener un efecto como más fuerte en la distribución de Celasphorus platycercus. Al menos esos son los modelos que nosotros hemos corrido y que nos está indicando que la temperatura, la humedad son factores. Entonces, David, tu idea es excelente Y ahí es donde viene lo truculento, cómo le hacemos cuando estamos en un cambio climático y entonces decíamos, bueno, ¿cuál es la amenaza? Es que va a ser la falta de humedad o el cambio de temperatura, pero ¿cómo hacemos para recrear entonces un ambiente que tenga esas condiciones para que crezcan las plantas y que esté el colibrí ahí?
Thank you, Saraí. And I'll give Claudia a minute to transfer between English and Spanish. Any other comments on that topic or any other questions?
There's a question for you in the chat.
I don't see a question. I see the link.
It's a question from Tatiana about the plans and guides.
Oh, thank you. I didn't see that. You're right. And the presentation, Tatiana, the plants and the guides that we shared in the presentation are on the Western Hummingbird Partnership website. So those are at westernhummingbird.org, and I'll put that in the chat.
And Sue, I think you're going to have a website for the documents that we develop during this process as well.
Yeah, so actually Jacqueline and Armando have developed a website for us where we're putting resources so that if you want to learn more about conservation planning and the process, as well as the materials for this plan, you can go to that website. We decided not to share it now because we didn't want to overload you with too much information. But as we move to the conservation plan process, we'll share those resources. Jacqueline and Armando, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, just it'll be a place specifically for the workshop that folks can go to access, like Sue said, not only the background documents, but work through, where we're collaborating during the workshop. Just kind of a catch-all instead of working out of a Google folder. But yeah, it'll be shared closer to the workshop date.
It's a lot easier than using the Google folders.
Yeah.
That's nice. Oh, it's great to see everybody. Thank you so much, Sherry. It's good to see you.
And Edwin has his hand up.
Edwin, there's your hand.
Hi, I just had a comment. I'm wondering if it's part of the people that have been invited for the workshop, if there's been or there's plans to do outreach to some of the Western states. I think that would be good to include some other states in the workshop.
Yeah, so we're hoping for your help with that, Edwin. And I want to say that to everyone who's on the today. If you don't see someone who is interested in hummingbirds, interested in Western conservation, who could help out, this is just a preliminary meeting today. So we really need everybody between now and March 30th. So we're very happy to add people who are interested in this process between now and March 30th. So yeah, look around and let us know who's missing. Feel free to invite them yourself. And I think the easiest thing is to introduce them to Sue, and she can get everybody on the mailing list. So please. I think there's a number of Fish and Wildlife Service folks who've been invited who weren't able to come today, who will join for the planning if their schedules permit. So I know there's a lot of people who plan to participate who aren't here today.
I know that the Pacific Flyway Council meeting is coming up in February, so I'll be sure to mention it to that group, if they're not aware that they can.
That'd be perfect. Thank you.
And I'm glad to see California is represented here. I just saw Hillary mention
that. So in the chat, people are mentioning others that they would like to have added to the list. So I'll add those from here. You're also welcome to email me with any other people you'd like to get to receive an invitation to the workshop. And even any other suggestions you have for how we can make the workshop go smoothly, especially between the English and Spanish speakers. We want to make sure everyone has, we're hoping Claudia will be available to translate for us again in the end of March and April, 1st of April. So any suggestions you have for the process or making it work for everyone, we appreciate that. And Claudia says she's available, so that's great. Thank you, Claudia. Any other questions or comments? Am I missing any hands? Anybody just want to share what they're doing? There's, I mean, this is like a room full of expertise that's rare to find in the hummingbird world, right?
So the other thing that would be great is if people could make us aware of publications or gray literature or anything that affects the conservation of these species in these 3 countries. I know a lot of us are trying to keep track of it as best we can, but I think collectively we know a lot more than any one of us does individually. So if you could share important documents so that we can all read to prepare for the meeting, that would be fantastic. And as we mentioned, in order to save these birds, we need to really affect their habitat and take care of a number of other kinds of threats that aren't even always habitat related. And so there are some people who might not be hummingbird experts, but are experts in some of the threats that we're dealing with. And we'd love to have as many of those kinds of people participate as possible as well.
Hi, it's Christine. I just want to make a comment about the workshop. I think one of the real strengths of this is was brought up here is that there'll be a lot of people, as there are in this call, who are doing a lot of work with hummingbirds, conservation science, combination of both. And it's an opportunity for you as you attend the workshop to get to know a broader group and what they're working on. So even as you're contributing your concepts of priorities and actions through the 3 days, you'll be able to interact with people and find out what they're doing. And I also suggest that perhaps WHP could, if people are able to submit something about their group and kind of their major effort, what they do, maybe there'll be a list that if people can look at ahead of time to know who's going to be there, what they do, so that you can make sure that you can broaden your collaboration or interact with them on the calls or the breakout groups as they occur, and and the groups that the topics that you'd like to see discussed. So that would, to me, be really a great preparation and something that people can get out of it before they put into it.
Okay, I'm responding to chat right now. So any other comments? We've got a lot of people pitching in here. How would you prefer we share recent papers or reports that might be of interest? Maybe Erin, you can send that to me and then I'll add them to, we have a Google Drive folder of papers focusing on hummingbirds. We can add to that and we can share with the group, especially those that might be pertinent or relevant to what we're working on. And I know your lab does some amazing work. And also, I just want to say that we know that the times are hard for everyone. I know it doesn't work great for universities. It was difficult for us. Field season is also another difficult time. So we found the best times possible, and we hope that they work for as many of you as I can. The workshop will be March 30th, March 31st, and April 1st. And we've blocked off 4 hours each day. So it's not all day. And those hours are kind of morning to early afternoon, depending on, or late afternoon, depending on where you're located. It'll be 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. Eastern time. So if you want to adjust from there, but we'll send out a formal invitation as well. Okay. Well, we're at the top of the hour. So again, you're welcome to stay on and discuss the process, or add some suggestions, or I think we've completed our presentation, or you're welcome to take off. Any other comments, Greg or Christine or Sarayi?
No, just real excited to have this process moving, and really happy that people are volunteering to participate.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just say thank you for joining this call. I know people are super busy. Their energies are, they want to focus on conservation. I think that this is going to be a good investment of your time, and appreciate your time today.
It's the same. I hope everybody can stay with us in that important workshop. And I think all of you, each of you are very important because you represent different organizations, and all of you are important to conserve hummingbirds. So if we think about those migrant hummingbirds, we are thinking also in the resident and endemic species. So thanks a lot for everybody to be here with us and take an adventure under this beautiful project that each of us will be part. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm going to turn off the recording.